All right. All right, terrific. I think we're all here and ready to go. And so welcome to Literary Travelers Fauxscars of 2021. And so what are the Fauxscars? They are a literary award that we give to literary movies or movies based on books or plays. And so I think this is maybe the seventh or eighth year that we've done it. I should know. And so we have two of our contributing editors here. We have Jaclyn Tilks and Hannah White. So I don't know if you want to say hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Great, great. So we're going to talk about some of the great movies that came out in 2020 and give a couple of awards, three awards. We're going to give a best literary adaptation of a classic, and then we're going to give a literary adaptation of a more modern work, and then we're going to do a best literary travel movie. So in terms of this year and some of the movies, I think it was an exciting year. There were a lot of great movies that ran the spectrum, and I had a lot of favorites. And I think there were a lot of movies that talked about for me, what leapt out was there are movies that talked about the African American experience, and that's very relevant, I think, today, especially this week with all that's going on in the country. And so some movies that stood out for me, there were Da 5 Bloods, Spike Lee's movie, Judas and the Black Messiah, One Night in Miami. And one particular movie that I really enjoyed and I thought was great and that I would give the Fauxscar to for the best literary adaptation of a modern work was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And so this was Chadwick Boseman's last movie. He, I think, passed away and before the movie was completed, so they dedicated the movie to him. But it's an adaptation of an August Wilson play. And part of the genesis for this was that Denzel Washington was the producer, and he had signed a deal with HBO to produce 10 films based on August Wilson's works. And you've got Chadwick Boseman's character who plays Levy, who is part like a newer member of a jazz blues quartet that backs up Ma Rainey. And there's a back and forth throughout the movie with Levy and Ma Rainey. And Ma Rainey is just amazing work by Viola Davis. I didn't recognize her, but she was just phenomenal in this role. And so there's a lot of back and forth between them. And it's really, I felt, a lot of what the movie talked about and the dialogue and the back and forth was, at that time, what was it like to be Black in America, and whether that's you can't walk into the store to buy something, or you can't live in your community because of the violence that's perpetrated against you. So it was really moving. And the main character, Ma Rainey, is just a force in this. And she's mean, but you sort of understand why. And Chadwick Boseman just plays against her, I think, in a great way, where he is this he's the trumpeter, and he's trying to kind of break out from the band, and it's all about what happens and how he's perceived and treated by the band, and it's much more complex than that. And I don't want to give it away, but I definitely want to recommend that everybody see this. And especially for Chadwick Boseman's performance as well. It was his last film. And one thing that occurred to me was that we need to have an article about August Wilson as a writer, because the dialogue was great in this, and he really paints a picture of what life was like. So for that movie, that is the best literary adaptation of a modern work. So the Fauxscars goes to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And so the next movie that we're going to talk about, I think, Hannah, did you want to talk about the next film?
Yeah, so to kind of celebrate the upcoming Oscars, I decided to rewatch the old adaptation, the 1996 adaptation of Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow. And so for my article, I compared that with the newer one with Anya Taylor-Joy, the 2020 version that's nominated for the Oscars. And the biggest things that I found different between the two is the characters and then also the costumes and the scenery. So I found that the characters are much more memorable in the new adaptation, and I think you agreed, Jackie. I don't know if you want to join in a little bit. I also found that the new Emma is more true to the book. I think Jane Austen said that Emma was supposed to be kind of unlikable, and I found that Gwyneth Paltrow's version was very palatable, even though you see in the beginning like she's sort of selfish, but I felt that Taylor-Joy's Emma was a little bit more brazen, a little bit more dramatic, and I really liked that about the newer one. Just more personality, I think. And then also Knightley, I love Johnny Flynn. I think they had better chemistry, him and Emma, in the new one. We get more intimate moments with them. We even get like the changing scene of Johnny Flynn in the beginning. And then we get a lot more scenes too of them, Emma and Mr. Knightley, like away from the party. Whereas in the older one with Gwyneth Paltrow, I feel like most of their interactions were they were surrounded by other people and it just wasn't as intimate. And then Mr. Elton too, I felt like he was more of a caricature type of a person in the new one, whereas he was a little more subdued in the older one with Paltrow. Just more out there and dramatic. I love when he's repeating the same thing about Churchill's estate at the dinner when they're having conversation. He just keeps repeating the same thing and everyone's sort of rolling their eyes. And he's talking about the weather. And even Mr. Woodhouse, who's not in it very often in the newer one, he does such a great job of building the character with such little lines. Like he doesn't even talk that much, but when it just shows him like sitting by the fireplace with like those things around him because he feels a chill draft. I loved that, and just his facial expressions. I just felt he was even better than who played Woodhouse in the older one.
He was really good, and I thought he was funny, and I forget the actor's name, but I recently saw him in Shaun of the Dead, which is like a zombie movie, an English zombie movie that's really tongue-in-cheek, and he plays the dad in that, and he was really good in it.
Yeah, and I know, Hannah, you touched upon like how to just like the costume and the scenery. I feel like that plays off of the way that they portrayed the characters in this one, because it was like there was something that you almost couldn't put your finger on, where it was like almost like magical realism, where like you thought that like, I don't know, a unicorn could fly by or something. Like everything was just so like vibrant, and like there was this but magical feeling to it. But on the other hand, the characters were so much more flushed out than in like the Gwyneth Paltrow's Emma was just so much softer, and like I don't know, like you didn't get as much of a connection to her as with Anya. You're like, I kind of don't like you after you insult. I can't remember now. At the picnic scene when she made that horrible insult, and you didn't like her in that moment, but it just made her feel so much more real because you had that kind of like emotional reaction. Whereas Gwyneth Paltrow kind of just stays a little more flat throughout the film. I thought there was a lot more developed, like you said, the characters in this one.
Mm-hmm. I felt that, and I loved the older one, but I just felt it was much more traditional. And like you said, it was softer. Even the colors, it was just more muted. It was darker. Whereas this one was very bright. Like she'd be wearing like a bright pink dress and it would be like a bright green background. And I felt that it was more just artful and kind of like you said, like more of that magical realism idea. Yeah, I love this one so much. I love that I rewatched it and then I rewatched the older one. I love the new one so much.
I like how you brought out in your article too the part where she has the bloody nose, because it just felt, I don't know, like there's more of a history between them in the 2020 version, and that scene just felt so I don't know, like that would be like a story that for a couple, you know, where something goes wrong and it's not quite so over the top romantic, like some of the other Austen stories. So
I felt like the new one was more realistic in how, even though some of the characters were extremely dramatic, and I said almost borderline like caricatures of people, but I just felt it was more realistic in the romance aspect. Whereas, like I said, the original one was more of like a fairy tale story, which they're both great in their own ways. But I felt the newer one was definitely tailored for a more modern audience. But I like that about it.
One thing I liked about the most recent version versus the book, I would agree with you. I felt like the relationship comes more naturally. It feels more natural in the movie than it does in the book. It felt like it snuck up on me reading the book, where it's like more natural in the movie, which, you know, they can do that, but and I thought that worked a little better, actually. Sorry, Jane. Great. Well, thank you, Hannah. And Jackie, you wanted to talk about, I believe I'll let you take the reins.
Sure. So I'm giving out the award for, or the Fauxscar for the best literary travel book. So that's going to Nomadland. And so I actually watched the movie, and then afterwards I listened to the book on tape through my local library. And it was, I loved the movie for many reasons. And then when I started doing research and listening to the book on tape, I watched the movie. Frances McDormand's performance is just, she's just so talented. Everything she does, she gets so deep into the characters. And the way that it's filmed, like at the beginning, you're almost like, it's almost like too slow, and you're like uncomfortable and you're not sure what's going to happen. And there's this kind of like darkness about it. But I feel like that's all kind of intentional, because, you know, it's talking about people who are like in one place and then they move. And I just felt like, so it turns out that Frances McDormand's character is a made up person. But the other people in the movie are actually real nomads. So they're real people that are in the book, that because it's a nonfiction story. And they cast them as characters. So I'm trying to remember their names now. I think it was Lisa, if I'm getting that right, but that's her real name. And if you looked at IMDb, like, you know, almost all of the nomads, that's their real name, because they actually are playing in the movie. And yeah, just the cinematography, it feels like you're kind of like put in this place where you feel like you're Fern, the main character, in a way, because, you know, there's these slow spans across the landscape and they're driving down this beautiful highway out west. And then when you get to the book, there's a little more on like the expose of like these companies that kind of like take advantage of these people who are in financial hardships and need to work at Amazon for 12 hours a day and work, you know, walk miles and miles and miles. And a few other, you know, some of these camping sites that hire seniors. And it's just really just an expose on what our current economic struggles are in this country. There was something shocking at the end where they said that the gap, the financial gap between the haves and the have-nots is the same as it would be like in China or Russia or Argentina or some of these countries that we think we're so different. So it was really fascinating to watch the movie and then read the book. And there was a lot of women too. There was a female director, and then, you know, the main character is a woman, and to have a lifestyle like that, you may not be something you'd always think first of all of a woman, but there were a lot of single women, you know, living this lifestyle. So I definitely would recommend the movie and the book if you want to get a little more into it. And yeah, just the cinematography for those like landscape spans and kind of that slow, quiet walking behind her as she's in the camps and that sort of thing. Definitely would
Right.
recommend that.
Yeah. I thought the movie, I haven't read the book, but I thought you did a nice job explaining and setting the stage between the two. And one thing, I didn't know what to expect with the movie. I'm thinking, is this a travel movie? I've heard a little bit about it, and then when I watched it, it wasn't that at all. And it wasn't like I didn't feel like, and how do I say this? I didn't feel like the people, the nomads, wanted to travel or were wandering because they wanted to. It felt like they weren't connected to any place. Like it felt like, and you see this with the main character when she's in a house or she stays with her sister or she goes and visits her friend, she can't sleep in the house or she can't stay, or she says, I can't sleep in the bed. And I don't know if it's a restlessness. It's much deeper than that. It's like a sadness that just permeates through that, where she's just not connected. She's connected to the past and her memories. And you see that in one scene where there's like a plate that her dad gave her that it breaks, and how she deals with that. And it's just, you can just see there that they're not traveling in the traditional sense. They're getting experiences and they're connecting to people, but they're like looking for that connection, I think, is what brings them out, because they don't have it wherever they are. They, in the main character's case, she's sort of lost it because she lost her town and her family or her husband. But it was very moving, powerful. It left me like wanting more, and really blown away with McDormand's performance. Like, she was really amazing in that. So
yeah, it was kind of cool because I guess Frances McDormand has also sort of struggled with being in the spotlight. So she, the idea of sort of like taking off in an RV is something she'd sort of thought about at one point, and she's hard to get an interview with and stuff like that. So they talked about how this movie was so deeply personal to her. And I think you hit it on the head. There was this like sort of, like the restlessness or this excitement of like going somewhere new, but that it was also like the sadness or like the financial situation that got them into it in the first place. And the book gets more into the people who sort of have chosen that lifestyle for like philosophical reasons. So there's just all these different layers to like how and why people ended up in these situations as nomads. And just kind of looking at it from all the angles, and even like I think Fern's character, you feel kind of sad for her, but you don't feel bad for her, if that makes sense. You can empathize with her, like especially like you said, having lost her husband and her town, Empire, Nevada, where they had closed the place where everyone worked, and they kind of basically everyone had to move out because this gypsum mine closed. And yeah, just some of this like recent history that I didn't even know about. I'd never even heard of that town or that kind of culture. And that was kind of the extreme opposite, right? Where she had like everything and all her community was there. And then her community was kind of like on the road everywhere. But
yeah, it was great. And the director was amazing. And I think she was even, I think she was a student of Spike Lee's, actually.
oh wow.
I think I read that she's from China, I think, originally, but studied in Britain and then in the States. So yeah, thank you, Jackie. That was great. And I think that as well. And there were a couple of foreign films that were really good. Another Round with Mads Mikkelsen was terrific, and White Tiger was really great as well. So yeah, so thank you, Jackie and Hannah. I think this was great. It's great to celebrate movies, especially in my opinion, if they're connected to a great book that you can read and really get into as well.